The 2010s brought us some of the best playoff series we've seen. I mean, we have the Spurs versus the Heat.
4 to shoot. Parker, spread the Heat. Oh, what a block from James!
We had the Cavs versus the Warriors series.
Irving and Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good! Kyrie Irving from downtown!
And more. But there's one particular series that was very intense, and it was focused on one of the best scorers in the league at the time versus one of the best defenders in the league at the time. Yes, we're talking about Klay Thompson and the Warriors versus Tony Allen and the Grizzlies. The series was a clash of styles. The new school offense with a heavy emphasis on three-pointers versus a more old school defensive-minded team with an emphasis on the inside game. Simply put, this series was a battle. But guys, before we get into the video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel below. It'll really help a small channel like mine grow. Thank you for watching my new basketball channel, Mike Swish. In the 2014-2015 season, the Warriors first began to dominate. The Warriors ended the season with a record of 67 wins and 15 losses, which was the best in the NBA and cemented the #1 seed. This is following a tough loss in the playoffs the year prior to the Clippers in Game 7 in the first round. This loss to the Clippers would ultimately be the beginning of a new era for the team. Mark Jackson, their head coach at the time, was fired after this loss. So when the 2014-15 season began, it was the first season under their new head coach and current head coach still, Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr began taking this team to new levels. But it should be mentioned what Mark Jackson did with the Warriors before Kerr got there. He started building this chemistry and this brotherhood on that team that we still see to this day, even though Klay left. There was a brotherhood built on that team that really doesn't get much credit. But I just wanted to throw that in. But this season, the Warriors really began to dominate, and that was undeniable. Curry got his first MVP award and averaged 23.8 points per game, and Klay Thompson averaged 21.7 points per game and got his first All-Star team appearance. This is the same team where Klay scored 37 points in a single quarter versus the Kings, which is a record that still stands today. At this time, Klay was just 25 years old and already began getting compared to Reggie Miller and Ray Allen for his shooting ability. They also saw him as an X factor on the team because teams were starting to now focus their defense on Curry, which meant Klay had to step it up. Simply put, the Warriors started to build their identity as a jump shooting team, and this was so early on in the trend that it first began getting hate from a lot of old school players.
I have said the exact same thing for 16 years here. I don't like jump shooting teams. I don't think you can win the championship beating good teams shooting jumpers.
But don't get it twisted. The Warriors also had the #1 defense in the league that season, which is also overlooked. Now the Grizzlies, on the other hand, they didn't have the offensive power like the Warriors, but they did have an old school defensive mindset that was tough and relentless. The Grizzlies ended their regular season with a record of 55-27, which is the 5th seed in the West. Many saw this as the peak of the grit and grind era with Zach Randolph, Marc Gasol, Mike Conley, and Tony Allen. The Grizzlies also achieved some impressive accomplishments that season. I mean, Marc Gasol made the All-NBA first team and even finished in the top 10 in MVP voting. And Tony Allen made the NBA All-Defense first team. Tony Allen was one of the best defenders we've seen in our modern game. I mean, Kobe once called him the toughest defender he ever faced. The Grizzlies played a slow, physical, and defensive-minded basketball. The Grizzlies also had a tough loss in the playoffs the season prior to OKC in Game 7 in the first round. Going into the 2015 playoffs, both the Grizzlies and the Warriors, they both dominated in the first round. The Warriors played against the New Orleans Pelicans, and simply put, Curry and Klay dominated. Curry averaged 33.8 points per game that series, and Klay averaged 25 points per game. They swept the Pelicans and moved on to the second round really quick. The Grizzlies, they played against the Portland Trail Blazers. Tony Allen limited Lillard in that series, and honestly, Gasol and Randolph, they just punished the Blazers with interior play. It simply overwhelmed the Blazers. The Grizzlies beat Portland 4-1 in the series, and they moved on to the second round to play against the Warriors. This matchup would end up being a clash of styles. The Warriors, they had that fast-paced, offensive-minded style of play, while the Grizzlies, they had a slower-paced, defensive-minded style. Game 1 was in Golden State, and the energy was crazy. And a part of that was because news of Curry getting the 2015 MVP award started to make its rounds. even though it was officially announced the next day. The Grizzlies had a big problem though. Mike Conley couldn't play in game 1 due to him suffering a facial fracture in the Portland series. So the Grizzlies, they had to start Udre as Conley's replacement, and honestly, this would end up hurting the Grizzlies offensively and defensively. Starting the game, the Warriors came out hot and remained hot the entire game. Curry hit big threes that would keep the momentum going, and Draymond Green even hit big shots. The Warriors even led by 20 points at one point. Klay Thompson had 18 points, which was less than what he was averaging in the last series, but it was still decent. He ended up going 8 for 18 from the field and 1 for 4 from 3. And this was kind of an early sign that Klay was gonna possibly have a rough series. Tony Allen played hard defense and even got 2 steals, but the Warriors' ball movement ended up just being too much for the Grizzlies, and an adjustment needed to be made for the next game. Going into game 2, Conley returned wearing a protective mask, and boy did it help the Grizzlies. He led the team with 22 points in his return. It looked like a different Grizzlies team. Tony Allen had 4 steals that game, with the iconic steal on Klay, and reminding him that he's first team all defense. In fact, he repeated it multiple times to make sure he knew that. This would end up being one of Klay's worst games in the series. Klay was held to only 13 points and went 1 for 6 from 3. The Grizzlies winning one game in Golden State was huge, and also it was the Warriors' first loss in the playoffs that year. The score was 97-90. Game 3 was back in Memphis, and just like it was in game 1, that crowd was electric. This time, Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph led the team in scoring, with Gasol having 21 points and Randolph having 22 points. But Tony Allen's defense was relentless once again, earning 4 steals and limiting Klay once again to 16 points and 2 for 6 from 3. In fact, the Warriors only made 6 threes all game and went 6 for 26 as a team in the first half alone. The Warriors needed to make major changes, and the Grizzlies ended up taking it at home 99-89, and the series was now 2-1 Grizzlies. Going into game 4, the Warriors just now lost 2 back-to-back games, and panic started to set in for them. And they knew they needed to make a major change to even have a chance to win this series. They needed a way to slow Tony Allen down on the defensive end.
So we made that defensive adjustment, and Ron Adams suggested
that we put Bogut on Tony Allen. Stayed in the paint and protected the basket, and we let Tony shoot.
And if they want to throw the ball at Tony Allen and let him shoot, let him shoot. Okay.
This change was a turning point in the series. Curry once again had 33 points that game with 4 threes, which led the team in scoring. Tony Allen didn't have much of an impact on that game, and the Warriors forced him to be a jump shooter, which he never really was. Because Bogut was just hanging out in the paint, it clogged the paint and made Gasol's and Randolph's job harder. However, Klay remained struggling from the field with only 15 points, but it didn't matter because the Warriors blew out the Grizzlies 101-84. Game 5 was back in Golden State, and the worst thing was about to happen to Tony Allen. He only played 5 minutes that game because he was having hamstring trouble. The Warriors capitalized on this. Curry had 18 points, Klay had 21 points, and Draymond had 18 points. They would simply dominate the Grizzlies and had momentum the whole game. The Warriors ended up blowing out the Grizzlies again, 98-78. In Game 6, the Grizzlies had their backs against the wall, and once again, Tony Allen was only able to play 5 minutes because of hamstring trouble. With his absence once again, the Warriors were able to get whatever they wanted. Curry had 32 points, and Klay had 20 points. The Grizzlies gave it everything they had, but when the Warriors have momentum and your team is dealing with injuries, it's almost impossible to beat the Warriors. Warriors won that game 108-95 and beat the Grizzlies in the series. Though it was riddled with injuries, it was interesting to see the battle between Klay and Allen, and even more so, the clash between a defensive team like the Grizzlies and an offensive team like the Warriors. But what's interesting is it truly shows how great Tony Allen's defense really was, because up until the point where Tony Allen was injured, Klay wasn't a factor in that series. And Klay only started becoming a factor once Tony Allen had those hamstring injuries. Do you think if Tony Allen and Mike Conley were to have been healthy, the Grizzlies would have won this series? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.